of the noise, so let's bear with that. And I think the conversation is going to be so amazing. We're going to drown out the noise anyways. Welcome everybody to the Brain Date on collectivizing knowledge. I'm so excited to see so many of you here. And I think we'll have a couple more people joining in as we go along, but let's start on time nonetheless. My name is Rucha. I'm part of an organization called CoLab, and we do everything research and design, which is why I am here today to talk to you about collectivizing knowledge as well. To get started, so in typical Sikshagraha style, we don't do typical stuff. We're not going to start with a panel. We're actually going to start with a game. I'm going to ask you to self-organize yourselves into 5 groups. So about maybe 6 to 7 in each group. So you can just twist your chairs around a little bit and get into 5 groups. It's from month. Okay, perfect. I can hear myself now, so you can hear me. Great. I see. Please, yes, those of you who have joined in, we've just gotten into groups, so maybe you can observe what's happening and then get in. Just get in the zone. It's all good. What we're going to do now is you should have or should be having very shortly a black box given to you. Yes? Every group has that? Okay, perfect. So one of the first things that you're going to find in the box are some role cards. They're going to have roles on them like a school leader or a cluster resource person or a district official. So you're going to have some interesting role cards in there. What I'd like you to do is just take out those role cards and distribute them among yourselves. Just take one role each. Only the role cards for now, please. It's the A4 sheet. Can I please? Yeah, these, the role cards, they look like that. Only distribute that. Yeah, the A4 sheet. Only this. Only this. Just that. The roll, yes, that one. They look like cut up A4 sheets. Okay, perfect. I see we have, sorry about that. I see we have our roll cards. Can I get a show of hands if you've gotten your roll cards? Perfect. Amazing. So we are going to play a game, and the rules of the game are as follows on the screen. So I'm going to move so you can see them. So the aim of the game is to develop a really strong program, okay, to address some challenge. So you're going to find challenges. But the aim of the game is to design a strong program. Sounds simple? We do this every day, and that's why half of you are in the room today. We're like, we do this designing programs every day. But there are a couple of catches. Second, you have diverse roles working together, which you've figured out by now. You've just distributed all of the role cards. And I see you're reading them. So you have some stuff on the roll cards that's going to help you play that game as well, right? Now, I saw you passing around a couple of other things in the box. I'm going to quickly walk you through the other stuff in the box. You have building blocks of a program. So you have challenges, you have some impact statements, you have some stakeholders, activities, so on and so forth. So you have all of the building blocks of a good program within that black box. All right? So in the next 5 to 7 minutes, what we're going to do is we're going to try and design a program using those building blocks, keeping your stakeholder roles or hats in mind. Yes, still sounds easy? Still sounds easy. No. Let me complicate it for you a little bit. See, you're going to design a good program. You're going to use the stuff, the building blocks that you already have. You're going to keep your stakeholder hats on. And finally, the catch. These 2 groups, while you design your programs, you can only think about evidence that's publicly available. So your evidence on government websites, your policy releases, or public reports have been released out there. These 2 groups, only publicly available evidence. Yes? These 3 groups get to have a little bit more fun. You can think about data that your stakeholders will have access to. So if you know that already, you've worked with these stakeholders, great, bring that in over here. So you can keep in mind what typically an HM will have access to, or typically what a district official will have access to. So you can think about all of that data as well. Yes? Awesome. So the time starts now. That group is back? Yes. Okay, my friends from Mantra, we're back. Okay, great, great. I know we didn't complete it, so that's fine. That's our everyday. We're designing programs for months and we still feel like there's ways to go, so don't worry about that. But what I really want to hear from you is how was the experience of putting on your stakeholder hats, which we forgot a lot of the times. But what was that experience of putting on that hat, of thinking about the data that you had access to, of actually keeping in mind the evidence or the knowledge that you had access to? How was that experience? What emotions came up? What emotions and what insights came up? I'd love to hear from a couple of people in the audience. Well, except for the emotion that we need more time. I know that emotion. I know that emotion. But except for that.
Sure.
Okay, I can say it was quite chaotic, but also exciting at the same time. Had to remember what roles we are playing. Yeah.
I think at some point we all forgot that there are roles in place and just looked at the problem, the solution, and the steps in the way. And it, it was overwhelming, I'll say that. A lot of cards, but also a lot of fun trying to find the optimal way to go through when you have so many options and so many perspectives on how you want to work the solution through. Oh, we were the Jugaad team. We just kept finding a way to crack through the solution.
Any other reflections? And I love that. That's a great point. I heard two things. One is creativity with the chaos, and second is when do roles melt away? And the roles melted away for us because these were not real roles that we're used to. But I'd like you to take that, not that feedback, but that thought about how might we create spaces where those roles melt away a little bit. And I heard some reflections coming up here. Yeah, go ahead.
Seeding. So it was quite interesting to see everybody's perspective right from coming up with a challenge that we were deciding. So I think it's a lot of things that we need to discuss before we even come to the solution. So I think that was quite interesting.
And the last question, which again I know was tough to actually stick to, is what knowledge or data or evidence did you use? Did you actually stick to only publicly available knowledge? Or did you recognize the knowledge that these stakeholders actually come in with? The kind of knowledge and experiences that an HM comes in with or a district comes in with. So, what was that experience of keeping the knowledge barriers or openness in mind? Any thoughts?
I think for us, we started to follow it in the process manner where we were restricting or trying to stick to our independent roles and figure out which cards actually relate with ours. But after a point, I think we all just clubbed in and we were like, okay, let's find which card actually goes under the process and then we figure out our roles. So we tried to divide the process in some sense there.
Got it. Thank you for that. One last reflection, especially around the what kind of experiences were you able to bring in? Yeah. Okay.
So, as we thought about the consequences and all the relation to the extent level, and we have decided there is a too much roles are there, and I know about that role because I am working in it. So I just informed them this is not coming this school level, and I informed them.
Amazing.
Yes, so I have informed them, and this is the role which we are coming into the other level. So you can just have a another card, and you
Love
can
that.
use it for the thinking for that.
Super, super reflection. And thank you for bringing that in so strongly. Okay, last reflection there.
Interesting thing that we had here is because there were so many nice colorful cards, we didn't get to the problem statement. We started looking at the interventions and then we completely forgot that there are impact indicators because we were so obsessed with the outcome and output.
It
And
speaks a lot to our lived reality.
yes,
So.
and then we realized, oh no, we also have to look at the actual problem and our roles and then go back. So I think that experience of going back and forth and also bringing our own experience to the forefront, that we all had our own expertise and thought process and how that was overpowering.
Right.
Completely forgetting the problem at hand. I think that was that was interesting.
I think we can all resonate with that one. Thank you so much for
Rucha,
engaging.
there was just one more
Sorry,
thing.
yes.
It was all happening that everybody was designing the program by themselves. There was one feeble voice, somebody attempted to ask, is this okay with you? Rest of them are just designing their own programs.
Also relates so much to our lived realities as well, right? Thank you. Thank you so much for engaging in this very chaotic environment, both outside and then inside over here, but giving a glimpse into the kinds of mental models that we already operate with, right? That was the intention of surfacing some of those with this game before we hear from our speakers. I have the immense pleasure of introducing our 4 speakers for this afternoon today. We have Harry from the Blavatnik School of Government, the Government Outcome Lab at Oxford. There we have Harry over there. We have Cynthia, who's with the Bertha Center for Social Innovation. Yes, Cynthia's right here. Then we have, I'm going to call her VJ, because she's going to ask you to call her VJ as well. But we have Vyjayanthi from the Center for Exponential Change with us. And last but not the least, we have Jency. Yeah, Jency is right here from Boom. A warm welcome to all of our speakers who are really going to help us unpack what does it mean to collectivize knowledge, but not just collectivize. And as you can tell from the name, how do we put it in motion? It's not enough that it's in books or it's in papers or it's in our laptops, but how do we move it beyond that? How do we move it into policies? How do we move it into mindsets? How do we move it into communities? And that's something I'm personally very excited to hear from all of our speakers today. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you, Harry, and take it ahead.
You've got the 5-minute marker and stuff. Okay, thanks so much, everyone. It's my great pleasure to be here. I've been enjoying the morning so far and learning from all of you, and looking forward to learning more during this session. So I am an academic. I work in a university, so we're involved in the generation of evidence, of course. We collect data, findings, we try to synthesize the evidence and analyze it. But I also work in a school of government, and the ethic of the school is that everything should be policy-focused, practitioner-focused, and we try to encourage strong, productive relationships with policymakers and practitioners as well. But although that's the ethic of the school, I think anyone who has been involved in working with academics, and certainly I can say it from our side, that it's not as easy as it sounds, though everyone's in favor of it, but no one quite knows how to do it. And we worry a lot about, at least on the academic side, we worry about what we call the research practice gap, right? This disconnect between what we're producing in the universities and what a policymaker will choose to rely on and draw from when they're designing policy, or indeed practitioners when they're designing programs. And there are a few reasons for this. I think there's some mutual lack of understanding. Not enough time is put into developing effective communication strategies. But I can say I was reading a little about the research practice gap, and you can imagine my shock when I found out that from a policymaker's perspective, often they find academics' recommendations to be naive and unhelpful. So, this hurt me when I heard about this. And so the question is how then do you begin to get past that? And it's a big question. I'm very happy to hear your experiences and suggestions. A few that I can think of is, well, if we can begin on a self-congratulatory note, the fact that I am working with Shiksha Locum is one way in which we can begin to cross that divide. So thanks. So getting researchers embedded in practice networks and policy networks as part, and designing the research projects together so that the outputs of the research are from the start. The design is designed with the priorities of the policymakers and the priorities of the practitioners in mind. Placements in government as well would be useful. What part of my team back in Oxford is currently beginning a project where the researchers themselves will be embedded in local government offices as they're implementing, as they call it, test, learn, grow. So they're implementing lots of small pilots, they're gathering the data, and they're trying to do the sort of the data cycle of evidence-based policy in real time with a researcher in there. So another way in which that gap might be crossed. But a point I want to make here, a more broad point about evidence-based policy. Actually, this came to mind when I was in the timeline exhibit over here, and I came to the point about the Green Revolution in the 1960s and 70s, and how with the development of new agricultural methods, plant science, and so on, was on the one hand, it was very successful in terms of increased productivity, but it came at the cost of small farmers, marginalized communities, and so on. Now, the Green Revolution was nothing if not evidence-based. Right, agricultural colleges, scientific knowledge was being used, and the quantitative results are there, in the increased productivity, the increased calories, and so on. But it was not without costs as well. And so my sense is, thanks, is that when we're thinking about evidence-based policy, that we need to adopt a broader accounting, if I can put it that way. And it's not just quantitative, it's not just narrowly focused on a particular metric. There was a bit of discussion in our group over here over, metric choice. Does this metric actually indicate the impact we're trying to create? But also trying to keep within the accounting, keep an eye on what other effects might be going on as part of this particular intervention, whether it's evidence-based or not. So there are some values that are not quantifiable, and we should keep that in as well. I suspect I should stop there, Rucha, because of time, and if I get into another point, I'll overrun. But it's great to be here, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks so much, Harry. I will quickly hand it over to Cynthia, actually, so that you can keep hearing these wonderful insights without me butting in too much. Over to you, Cynthia.
Thank you. And first, I just want to say thank you to Rucha for having me here. It's been, first of all, a wonderful week, spending time on the learning journey with Shikshagraha and really learning from the ground, really getting to see the experiences firsthand. It's been a fascinating couple of days. And then being here at InvokED, I've of course heard about it for the last year, but actually being able to experience it myself has been a true inspiration. So it's really wonderful to be here. I'll just give a little bit of background so that the kind of framing makes sense. The majority of my research, so I'm actually, I have a home in 3 institutions on 3 different continents, I think. So I'm based at the Bertha Center for Social Innovation, which is at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. I'm also based at the Skoll Center for Social Entrepreneurship at the University of Oxford. And then within the last year, I've had the pleasure of working with the Schwab Foundation, at the Schwab Foundation for Social Entrepreneurship. So across these experiences, I've really had exposure to a lot of really exciting ideas hosted by social innovators and social entrepreneurs. But going back a little bit, my interest in all of this started with really trying to understand how do social innovators across many different problem domains, how do they scale their innovations? How do they do that so that they can ultimately create positive social change? And so I would say 15 years ago, that was the research question that we were asking. We were asking, how do individual social innovators and entrepreneurs scale their programs? And so over the course of several years, we were trying to answer that question. I think over that time, the social entrepreneurs began to ask us a different question. They said, in fact, we find that even when we are scaling our programs and our interventions to the largest degree that we can, we're not having the largest impact that we would like to have. We're not solving the social issue. So they started asking us, how do we change systems? How do we actually shift the very systems that are holding the problem in place? And for us, this really made us shift our own research to think about how do you shift systems rather than just scale interventions? When we started to ask that question, of course, we started to see things quite a bit differently. And at that point, we had a grant from the Schwab Foundation to really dig deeply into their whole body of work. So 300 social entrepreneurs who had, many of them, gone to great scale, and many of whom were already starting to shift systems. And that took us on a fantastic journey over the course of 5 years to learn from these organizations that were not just scaling interventions, but were shifting systems. My colleague Francois Bonici and I, we wrote a book based on our understandings of this, and we started to call this work systems work, because what we realized was that systems don't change by our design. They change by small interventions that start to scale into larger systemic approaches. Now, what was interesting about that was that after understanding what these organizations were doing, we started to realize that, in fact, we had missed the larger picture. Many of these organizations were actually working in collectives, and we had missed the collective piece because we were looking so closely at the organizations. So my colleague Francois and I he went to the Schwab Foundation, and he started a new category of award called the Collective Social Innovator Award. Now, that Collective Social Innovator Award was really exciting because it started to look at collectives, not just organizations. And one of those awardees is Shikshalokam. So that's, yes. So Shikshalokam is really for us a true exemplar in the organizing of collectives. I know I have to wrap up, but what I want to say is that when we talk about collectivizing knowledge, and what we have seen across all of these collective social innovators is that it doesn't start with the knowledge itself. It starts with an architecture that allows that knowledge to be shared. So they usually start with actually creating a set of shared values. That shared set of shared values then allows them to create a shared narrative, and that shared narrative allows them to have a shared vocabulary. It's only with this shared vocabulary that we can actually choose then the metrics that are going to make sense to share. So what I'd like to leave you with is that shared knowledge, it can't be shared until we actually have a common way of talking about the problem and a common way of talking about our set of solutions. And it's then that we can start to share knowledge and make that knowledge flow across the whole system.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. I think your point around collectivizing knowledge doesn't necessarily start with knowledge, but it starts with creating those pathways or those systems or that architecture to enable that. Thank you so much for that. I'd like to call on VJ to talk to us how might we reimagine evidence and how we use it.
Hi, everyone. Hope you're able to hear me there. So I just want to say about the researchers, the comment that you made on the research. We are getting there. We are getting to this embed model is working now, so you shouldn't lose heart. Right. And to your point, Cynthia, I don't know where you're now. Hey, I think you were bang on when you said shared knowledge begins with thinking in 3 layers in my mind also, which is a shared infrastructure and the shared way of curating that knowledge, because everything is so siloed, and then finally sharing it with the entire network. So very well said there. I know there is a lot to talk, but I would just leave you with a few thoughts that, because that we have seen in our work. So a short introduction. My name is Vyjayanthi, for those who can pronounce. For the rest of you, it's VJ. I am from the Center for Exponential Change, Bangalore. We work with system orchestrators. We are a support network for all the system orchestrators who are doing great job across healthcare and all different domains, education, equity, climate, and all our system orchestrators have gone through tremendous chasms, if you would say. There's a knowledge chasm, there's a design chasm, there is a self efficacy problem. So there are so many things that we have noticed, and we decided that we will support them in all those chasms so that they can overcome. And in that process, we also found that evidence and how we speak about evidence and create that into a shared narrative is an important thing. So I'm just going to give you a few pointers that are probably useful. First of all, we figured that voice, the literal voice of the community, is data. A lot of times we just do not consider them as data. They are like, oh, stories from the ground. Oh, this is so good to hear. And is in for the Hindi speakers, it's a jazbaat. That's where it stops. But voice is data. So that's something that we all have to start recognizing. And also, I don't want to go back to why evidence, and I would just stick to what and how, and probably a little bit time if there, I'll say so what, right? So I'll just speak about the what a little bit. So voice is data. We'll have to start recognizing that. And the next thing also we think is keeping the community at the center makes the world of difference. Like what we see as progress is not what they see as progress at all, right? So for example, we might say, oh, my program, it ran for a year, so I made progress because I did ABC and the tasks are complete. But if you go and ask them, that's just not progress for them. Probably it's the complete opposite of it. So keeping the community at the center makes the big difference. That's very important while you do evidence gathering. And a little bit about how we do evidence generation. First of all, I think we are very, very used to doing it at one point at the end of the program, kind of an evidence collection. What we tend to forget is evidence gathering has to be a continuous and a seamless process. It has to be so frictionless. It should be so quiet that people are not even knowing about it, right? So how do we make it continuous and seamless and make this learning as a habit in every organization? All right, so it's always not about pushing a survey and getting the evidence. There's so much data that's already looking at you, staring at you. So you might have to start sensing those as well, those flags, both red and green flags. So that's also data. And it's not one time, it has to be runtime or near runtime. And we have to remember that we have a whole bunch of people as frontline workers and communities, and there are program teams. We need to leverage all of them to collect data continuously. Collectivization, again, when we spoke about collectivization, it's not about standardization. We just keep confusing with that. It's not standardizing, it's about aggregation. The more the data, merrier it is, right? So thousands of signals, thousands of data, what is the trend? That is collectivization. It's not just about standardizing the same format for everybody. And it's also not about creating, it is about co-creating the data with the community and with the stakeholders that we are working with. And also, like you pointed out, it's not just collecting data for your own dashboards to make them look green and red and amber for the boardrooms. It's actually to share it back with the community. So once you share back with the community, you build the trust, and automatically that cycle is, they're looking forward to give their feedback more, so that's another thing. Finally, I know I have to wrap up before you show me that 1 minute. I'll talk, these are some pointers that we've figured on the way on how we gather evidence. But all this is okay. So what? What happens with all of these things, right? The evidence actually gains power only when the ownership changes from the institutions to the ecosystems. The ownership of this data or the insights or the evidence should never be sitting alone with the organizations. It's not going to go anywhere. It has to be shared with the ecosystem. And who owns the data really determines how the output is going to be and how the follow-through action is going to be. It will be powerful if it is in the hands of the people, as simple as that, right? And finally, I think I would just want to say that all this, what we're talking about, if done right, it'll create faster feedback loops, and it will help with adaptive decision making, as we call it, because it's not one time and it's not by one person. It's always adapting to the contexts. And finally, the outcome will be a shared accountability. It will never be a one organization's or a one individual's responsibility. So there was too much to tell within 5 minutes. You just made me go like that. But I'm here available if you want to share your thoughts or questions. It has been amazing playing that game. And I think it was designed, Janbujke, to make us go under that pressure of program design. Thank you for that. And it's really a privilege to be standing in front of you all and discussing all this. I look forward to the rest of the experience. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So I don't know how the speakers are packing so many insights into just 5 minutes. Don't worry, we'll have time for them to interact directly with all of you as well. Last but not the least, I'd like to invite Jency, who brings in a very unique perspective around what do we do with this data to help spread understanding in communities, in the public. So he brings experience from media to help us think that through. Over to you, Jency.
Thanks, Rucha. So, let me start with a story. Way back in 2016, when I came to Boom, I worked for this fact-checking website called Boom. And we identified a problem. We realized that the mainstream media is not looking at claims made on social media. Now, who's going to police them? I'm using a harsh word, but that was the challenge. Mainstream media journalists, because I came from that world, we saw it beneath us to actually go and fact-check claims on social media because we thought that's not serious journalism. So we started a newsroom and we started looking at claims. And then in 2016, this was not very well known, but we've seen the Frankenstein that the social media has become. So the one way we worked on it is we figured that this is way too big a problem. While we may look at the Prime Minister or the Home Minister or the Cabinet Ministers or MPs and MLAs and anyone in public service, we may pick their statements and we may fact check them, but there is a whole world out there who are unknown, becoming popular on the back of virality. Now, how do you make them accountable? So one way we did that is we built a tip line and we said, okay, we can't do this on our own. Very small team. We will never be the scale of a Times of India. So we said that we will put out a tip line and we will invite people to crowdsource and tell us what they're seeing. So we kept on approaching people saying that, okay, did you get anything on your WhatsApp? Can you forward it? And we made it extremely easy for them to do that. So we built an entire tip line tool. Now, when you send it to us, you also get the stories back to you because many claims we have already fact checked. So the one way we figured out is that when you partner with your readers and you tell them that you are working with us rather than typical journalism where it is a top-down approach where we will tell you what it is and you think like the way we want you to think. So we changed that approach and we said, okay, you tell us what is it that you're seeing on your WhatsApp groups? What is it that you're seeing in your family groups? Because that's the best way to figure what kind of political or communal narratives are being built. And some very interesting fact check stories we have done only because someone sitting in some part of the country or the world has thought that, that we should know about it, that it's going viral. The other very interesting way we should look at data as well. Now, there is data that the government puts out. Like, for example, one very popular and very successful program is to make India defecation free, right? So toilets have been built and there's no doubt about that. There's a lot of work that has happened. But one of our newsrooms, when we looked at that data, we figured that there's something wrong here. We actually sent out ground reporters to many of these villages where they said it's defecation free or the fact that there are no more open toilets. Every house has a toilet. And we figured in multiple villages where we sent out reporters that yes, there is a toilet built, but there's no water. Which means that they're still going out on the fields because there is no water. So we put out that story. And the reason why this helps is because when you actually send people out on the ground and you pick that evidence, then you're able to put this macro data into perspective. So that's one very useful way we figured that when you collect evidence right from the ground, when you connect with your own readers who are the people whom you're approaching, then the quality of your information becomes better. The stories you put out become better. And one very good example I can give you is during post-COVID, when vaccines were being given out, on most WhatsApp groups, especially among senior citizens, there was misinformation saying that if you take these vaccines, you'll die or you'll get some sickness. We partnered with a lot of these NGOs who work among senior citizens. We told them, we didn't tell them you take the vaccines or not because that's not our job. But we told them what you're seeing on your WhatsApp, groups. Look at these claims. What are these claims saying, and are you able to see the relevant evidence for that? And if you're not seeing the relevant evidence for it, then you please go and consult your doctor rather than listening to X, Y, or Z. Go to a professional who will guide you what you should be doing as far as these vaccines are concerned. So I'd like to stop here and happy to take some questions later on as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And I'm sure we had a lot of takeaways, especially from this, around who are the communities that we're working with and what are some mental models or norms in the community that are there that we might probably have to work with or challenge as we work with all of these communities. Now, in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to actually open the space for us to, again, self-organize into groups where our speakers will join each group and we'll get a chance to actually go deeper into some of these conversations in them. So again, it's going to get chaotic for a little bit, but I'm going to let maybe the speakers can find spots and we can self-organize around our speakers. So you get to talk to them directly as well.